Different type of scam in Adopt Me. The more than 9 items trade scam. In this scam, the scammer would offer over 9 items for the victim's item. As the Adopt Me trade system only supports 9 items or less, the scammer promises that they will add the extra items after the trade. When they trade, the scammer typically puts the items worth the least in first, claiming to give the more valuable items after. Once both sides accept, the scammer will leave the server, and the victim will be left without their whole offer and scammed out of their item. Note: a way to avoid this scam is for players to avoid trading for more than 9 items, even if the scammer promises to add very valuable items afterward. Adopt Me items game scam. This scam can be found in a Roblox game outside of a genuine Adopt Me game. The description of the game tells the victim that if they join, they will receive high-value Adopt Me items. Usually, once the victim joins, the game requests the victim to pay a small amount of Robux or to insert their password. It promises that once the victim does this, they will receive their high-value Adopt Me items. Once the password Robux is given, the victim will not receive their items. In turn, the victim would also be scammed out of Robux or have compromised their account by giving the password. Note: players should never give their password or Robux to a platform that promises items in return. Sometimes, the scammer may use the Roblox advertisement system or groups chats to advertise their false game. Players should report any advertisement on Roblox which promises items in return for Robux or any that asks for passwords. Advertising scam. In this scam, the scammer will advertise their social media, group, or account, and promise the victim a high-valued item if the victim follows them. The victim would then follow the scammer online, believing they will receive the item. After the scammer receives a high amount of subscribes, they would then leave the server without giving the promised item to the victim. Baby scam. In this scam, the scammer chooses to play the baby role. They then seek out a victim with the parent role and asks them to take care of them. After a while of the victim taking care of the scammer would ask the parent victim for an item. The scammer may even add on a false story to further trick the victim. The victim usually falls for this and would give the scammer the requested item. After the victim hands over the item, the scammer baby would either leave the server or stay to ask for more items. If the victim continues to take care of the baby without giving the item, the scammer would then leave the family and seek another parent-role player to scam. Other scammers, however, may continue bringing it up until the victim finally falls for it. Borrow scam. In this type of scam, the scammer would make up a reason and ask to borrow a high-valued item from the victim. They may back up their claims with a false story to further trick the victim. After the victim shows sympathy and hands over their item, the scammer would leave the game without returning the victim's item. In a different scenario, the scammer could ask to borrow a low-valued item to gain the victim's trust. Later on, they could ask to borrow a more valuable item, then leave the game once they receive it. Building house scam. In this scam, the scammer will ask for a house builder. They may gather players through the chat, by throwing a party, or through other means. Once the victims respond and agree to build the scammer's house, the scammer would then add them as builders through the Build with Friends stand. The builder victim would then be asked to pay the scammer bucks, so there will be a budget for the victim to build. The scammer may convince the victim to do this by making up a false story. They may claim they do not have enough bucks for the victim to build. After the victim pays the requested amount, the scammer removes the victim from their Build with Friends stand, retrieves the budget, which goes directly into their account, and leave. Note: the scammer may also promise a high-value item after the victim builds for them, as to tempt the victim further. However, in order for the victim to build, the scammer would require them to give bucks for the budget. Changing pet color scam. In this scam, the scammer will claim that they can change the victim's pet to a certain color if the victim gives them their pet. To prove they can do this, the scammer would equip a pet, which has a different color counterpart, and a regular pet potion from the potion shop. They say this potion can change the color of the pet. The scammer would then feed the potion to the pet and switch it with its different color counterpart as it finishes. To the victim, it will seem as if the color of the pet has changed. The victim will believe the scammer and hand over their pet. Once the scammer receives the victim's pet, they leave the server without returning the pet. Most of these scams are conducted with unicorns, griffins, and dragons, as they have different color counterparts in the golden diamond eggs. Note, it is impossible to change the color of a pet. Players should not believe others who claim they can do this, as it is always a conducted scam. Contest scam. In this scam, the scammer would hold a contest. They claim that in order to win, the victims have to give their best item to the scammer. In order to tempt the victims, the scammer announces a high-value prize to the winner of the contest. Most of the time, the prize is higher value than the victim's original items. The scammer would occasionally shout, "Username is now winning the contest." By doing this, they convince the victim into believing the contest is actually real. The victim would then give the scammer their items as they want the prize. Once the victims have handed over their items, the scammer would leave the server without giving the promised prize. Cross-trading. Other platform items, scam. In this type of scam, the scammer will claim they will trade another platform's item for the victim's items. These items do not fit into the Adopt Me trade box. This could include Welcome to Bloxburg cash, Royal High items, or similar items that do not fit into Adopt Me's trade. The scammer would require the victim to trade their items to the scammer first through the trade box. They tell the victim that they will give them the promised item after through the other platform game. After the victim trades the scammer their items, the scammer leaves without giving the other platform items they promised. Duo scam. This type of trick could be applied to most scams. In this scam, the scammer would have an accomplice, which could be a friend or alternate account. The scammer would attempt a scam, such as trust trading or selling pets for bucks. Their accomplice would stand close to them and claim they successfully trust traded or bought a pet from the scammer, and supports the scammer's claim to gain the trust of the victim. Note, if the accomplice, the player who successfully failed traded bought a pet from the scammer, or is on the scammer's friends list, they are more likely to be conducting a scam. If the alt account friend has given the item back to the scammer, or if the scammer asks for the item back, this is another warning sign of a scam. Egg hatching scam. This scam is considered very easy to spot, however, players do sometimes fall for it. The scammer would claim that their ordinary egg would hatch into a legendary. To back up their claim, the scammer adds a false story to convince the victim. The scammer could claim to have hacked the game, ensuring the egg would hatch into a legendary. They could also lie that the Adopt Me developers scripted the egg to hatch into a legendary. They may even use a different lie from the ones listed here. The victim would fall for their made-up story and trade their high-value items for the egg. The victim would be left without their items, as the scammer's egg nearly always hatches into a lower-value pet. Fake trading scam. This type of scam can be very deceiving if a player has not experienced it before. This scam features two scammer accounts working together. The accounts may know each other in real life or are alts of the scammer. The first scammer will claim that they are trading their high-valued item for a specific toy. They will not accept any other trades and will equip their best item to prove they have it. This specific item is usually a low-valued item, but not found in most inventories. Their alt account will hold out the specific toy their main is trading for. They will say they are taking offers for the specific item. The victim then catches on and believes that if they get the specific item from the scammer's alt, they would then be able to trade that item for the high-valued one from the scammer's main. The victim is then tricked into trading their best items for the alt's low-worth item. After the scammer receives the items on their alt, both the main and the alt account will leave the server. The victim would be left with a low-value toy instead of their original items. Note, scammers conducting this scam usually know each other in real life, or are using alts they have everything planned beforehand to trick the victim. Font's name scam. The scammer offers to change the name of the victim's pet, so it can be displayed as bubble letters, emojis, or an invisible name. To back up the fact that they can do this, they may have a pet out demonstrating the special effect name. The scammer tells the victim they need the victim's pet in order to name it with a special effect name. Once the victim agrees and hands over their pet, the scammer leaves the games without returning the pet with the font name. Scammers sometimes return low-value pets as they are only looking for a higher-value pet. If a player is only willing to font name high-value pets, they are most likely conducting a scam. Note: any player can find and use fonts for their pets' names by searching for free copy-paste font generators online. Emojis can be searched for using an emoji website, while several online videos show how to make an invisible name. These fonts, emojis, and effects are not exclusive to the scammers, they aren't paying to use them. Friend scam. In this scam, the scammer will find a victim, usually with valuable items, and manipulate them into friending the scammer. The scammer will often ask the victim to play Adopt Me, or interact with them regularly to gain their trust. After the scammer believes the victim trusts them completely, they will attempt to scam on them. Due to them being friends, the victim would be more likely to fall for the scam the scammer attempts. Once the victim falls for the scammer will leave the game and unfriend the victim. If the victim refuses, the scammer will immediately unfriend them and avoid interacting with them anymore. In this case, the scammer would then search for a new victim to scam. Note: in the scam, scammers may even ask for the victim's personal information. Players should never share their personal information with anybody. Give and return scam. In this scam, the scammer will tell the victim to give them an item, and that they would give it back right after. The scammer claims the victim can test them using a low-value pet first. After the victim gives the low-value item, the scammer would follow their word and hand the pet back. After the victim trusts the scammer more, they begin giving items of higher value to the scammer. Following a few rounds of returning the item, the scammer would then ask for the victim's best one, and promise they'll return it along with a high-value item. They may describe this as a gift for playing their game. Once the victim hands over their best item, however, the scammer would then leave the game without giving the victim's item back. The victim also does not receive the item the scammer promised, along with losing their best item. Guilt trip scam. In this scam, the scammer will seek a player with a highly valued item and attempt to guilt trip the victim. The scammer will first make up a false, guilt-tripping story. They will make this story as sad as they can, to make the victim feel bad for them. They could claim their family member has a certain disease, and that the family member would really like the victim's pet. They could also pretend to have issues in their personal lives, and that an item would make them feel better. The victim would then fall for the fake story, feeling sympathy for the scammer. After the victim gives their valuable item, the scammer would either leave the game or stay to scam other players with their fake story. Hacker scam. In this type of scam, the scammer will pretend they are in the victim's account and know the victim's password. They will ask the victim to give them their items, threatening to steal them if the victim doesn't hand them over. The victim would then be pressured into handing their items over to the scammer. In another version of this scam, the scammer may pretend they have the ability to put a bug in the victim's account. The scammer threatens that if the victim doesn't hand over items, the bug will be put in the victim's device account. Similar to the first version, the victim would also be pressured into handing their items over to the scammer. Note: a way to detect this scam is for the victim to ask the scammer to list all of the items the victim has, or, in the second version, to report the scammer immediately. If you know how to XXX, I will give you an XXX scam. In this scam, the scammer will tell the victim that if they knew how to do a certain scam and agreed to do the scam with them, the scammer would give a high-valued item. After the victim agrees and shows the scammer how to do the requested scam, the scammer would request the victim to risk their items or to go first in the scam. Under the temptation of the scammer's high-valued item, the victim would conduct the scam with their items. Once the scammer receives the victim's items and the scam is complete, they leave the game without returning the items, giving the promised high-value item. I got scammed hack scam. This is a very similar version of the pour and borrow scams, but can be used by players with Robux or Premium and is much harder to expose. The scammer tells the victim that they got scammed, hacked, and lost all their items. They may add extra details to the story, or temporarily put on a non-Robux avatar to further trick the victim. They then ask for free items after they earn the victim's sympathy. Once the victim falls for this, the scammer either leaves the game or stays to scam other players. Item pet duplication scam. In this scam, the scammer will claim that they can duplicate pets or items. However, they claim that in order for them to duplicate the item pet, the victim has to give them the item first. Once the victim hands it over, the scammer typically leaves the game. If the item is generally less rare, the victim could possibly get it back, as most scammers only want items with higher value. If the other player can't duplicate one of the victim's items for whatever reason, or will only duplicate high-valued items, then it is most likely a conducted scam. Note: it is impossible to duplicate any items in Adopt Me. Players should not trust people who claim they can, as it always ends in a scam. Mega Neon Switch Scam. In this scam, the scammer would put a neon pet in the trade box when trading with the victim. When the victim is adding items to the trade, the backpack covers most of their screen. The scammer takes advantage of this and would then switch the neon to a normal version of the pet while the victim is adding. The victim would not realize this and would then accept the trade. The scammer would then leave the server while the victim would be scammed out of their full trade. The scammer may also use a mega pet and replace it with its neon version in this scam. In another version of this scam, the scammer will add low-value items until the high-value one is placed at the last slot. While the victim is adding, they would replace the item with a lower-value one. As the victim would not pay as much attention to the bottom slot before accepting, they may be tricked into the trade. Note: players should fully inspect the trading menu before they accept a trade. Looking over all the slots is a way to avoid this scam. When trading for Mega Neon pets, players should also check whether the purple M Mega Neon sign is replaced with the green N Neon sign. They should also be aware when the neon sign is replaced with a normal version of the pet. Misconception Pet Item Scam. In this scam, the scammer will offer an item bearing a similar appearance to a high-value item. The scammer falsely claims that the item is a high-value item instead of their actual item. Due to similar appearances, the victim would mistake the two items and believe the scammer's item is the more valuable item. As a result, the victim would trade their valuable items for the scammer's item. After the trade, the victim would realize the scammer's item was not the one they originally mistook it for, but a less value item that looked similar to it. The scammer would then leave the server or stay to scam other players. Some items this scam is conducted with includes: dragon balloons can be mistaken for dragons, Shiba Inus can be mistaken for dingus, griffin propellers can be mistaken for griffins, kangaroo pagas can be mistaken for kangaroos. Several other items can be commonly mistaken for others. Note: when the scammer is conducting the misconception scam with a pet, they normally replace the pets with the name of the other pet. For example, the scammer could change the name of a dingo to Shiba Inu to trick the victim further. In this scam, some scammers prefer not to use the trading system, while others do. Neon Mega Pet Scam. This scam operates similarly to the item pet duplication scam. In this scam, the scammer claims that they can turn the victim's normal pet into its neon Mega Neon version. They tell the victim that in order for them to do this, the victim has to give the pet first. They may back up their claim with a false story to further trick the victim. Once the victim hands over the pet they want to turn neon Mega Neon, the scammer would leave the game without returning it. New Player Scam. In this scam, the scammer would pretend to be a new player and claim they have not played the game before. They may back this claim up with a fake story. The scammer would then ask for pets under this claim. The victim would believe this false story and be tricked into giving the scammer items. Once the scammer receives the victim's items, they leave the game or stay to scam other players. Note: in some scenarios of this scam, the scammer would keep their starter egg throughout the game. They back up their false story by saying that they still have their starter egg. The scammer may also dress up their avatar with typical new player gear to further mislead the victim. Other player glitching scam. In this scam, the scammer will agree on a trade with the victim. When the trade window opens, the scammer adds nothing while the victim adds their side of the trade. When the victim asks the scammer to put their items into the trade, the scammer claims they already added it. The scammer tells the victim that their trading menu is glitching and that the item was already there. The victim would believe this and follow through the trade. As a result, The victim loses their items and receives nothing in return. Note: trade menus do not glitch. While trade menus may lag due to the player's connection, the items always appear before either player can accept decline. The scammer's promised side of the trade is often higher value than the victim's as to tempt the victim into the scam. Pet sitting scam. In this scam, the scammer will offer to pet sit for the victim's pet. They will claim that in order for them to do this, the victim has to give the scammer their pet. The scammer promises the victim to give their pet back after they pet sit. Once the victim hands over their pet, the scammer leaves the game without giving it back as promised. In another version of this scam, the scammer would ask the victim to pet sit their pet for them instead. The scammer would promise a victim a high-value item if the victim gets the pet to a certain age. Once the victim falls for it and agrees, the scammer would add the victim to their family. When the victim finishes leveling up the pet, the scammer would then leave the game without giving the promised item in return. Note: if players request others to pet sit their pet, they should add them to the player's family. They can still handle the pet without the risk of the player losing it. Additionally, do not trust players who offer high-value items in return for pet leveling. It is nearly always a scam. Poor scam. To gain sympathy, the scammer will make up a story that will cause the victim to feel sorry for them. They could claim they do not have an in-game house, have no bucks, or another false reason. They could possibly dress up their avatar to back up their fake story. Once the victim gives the scammer an item, the scammer either leaves the server or stays to scam other players. Note: a way to expose this is for the victim to type console in the chat. By doing this, the player can open the developer console and search the scammer's username to check the number of bucks they currently have. If the scammer has a high amount of bucks, then they are most likely conducting a scam. Ride Fly Pet Scam. In this scam, the scammer would hold out or ride a pet potion or fly a pet potion to catch the victim's attention. The scammer will claim they will make the victim's pet rideable or flyable using the potion. However, the scammer says that the victim must give the pet in order for them to feed the potion. Once a pet is given, the scammer will typically leave the server without returning the pet with the potion. If a player denies feeding their potion to low-value pets, there is a high chance that it is a scam. Note: this scam can be avoided if the victim asks the player to just give the potion to them. If the player refuses to for whatever reason, then it is most definitely a scam. Roblox Scam. In this type of scam, the scammer will tell the victim that they will trade Robux for the victim's item. The scammer will insist the victim give their item first, and then they will give the Robux. After the victim hands over their item, the scammer would typically leave the game without giving the promised Robux. These trades are against the Roblox terms of use, so players should never trust these scams. Another scenario of the Roblox scam is when a random player or a spam bot sends a message in the chat. Most times, the scammer hasn't yet to pick a team and has a gray-white chat tag. The scammer will claim they got Robux from a legitimate site and share the said site. Sometimes, they will type server in front of their message to mislead users into thinking the site is genuine. Similar phrases include, "I got tons of Robux using XXX. Go to XXX on your browser to get Robux instantly." After they repeat this phrase several times, they leave the game to go to another server. Note: all these free Robux sites are fake and trying to steal your account. Please do not go to these websites. Selling for bucks scam. In this scam, the scammer would announce that they would be selling an item for bucks. For example, they could claim they would be selling a unicorn for 100 bucks. They may also set up a supposed contest where whoever pays the most receives the desired item. The scammer would always insist the victim pay them first and that they would give the item afterward. However, the scammer would then leave the game without giving the promised item. Do not buy items from players using bucks. Note: cash registers, ice cream vans, hot dog stands, and lemonade stands have been updated, limiting the number of times a player is allowed to pay. However, scammers may still attempt to sell their items for this maximum amount. Stars Event Currency Scam. In this scam, the scammer will offer stars, star rewards, or event currency for the victim's items. They will tell the victim to give the items first and that they give the stars event currency afterward. The scammer usually backs up this claim with a fake story. The victim would believe the scammer's claims and give their items first. The scammer would then leave the game without giving anything in return. Note: players cannot trade or give stars event currency. Do not trust players who claim they can trade these. The fake egg scam. In this scam, the scammer would choose to play the parent role. They would first equip a small-sized pet and name it after a non-existent egg. The scammer would then equip an egg food item that is a patterned egg and picks up the pet while they hold the food item. This appearance makes it seem to other players as if the food item egg the scammer has equipped is a genuine egg. The scammer would then make up a false story about the egg. They may lie about the age worth, claim it is a glitch, or otherwise make up a statement about their fake egg. The victim would then trade their high-value items for the egg food item. After the trade is completed, the victim would realize that the egg did not hatch into a pet and had no special effects on it. The scammer would typically leave the game after the scam. Note: players should keep in mind that the names of eggs are not able to be changed anymore. All changed names of a pet would be enclosed in parentheses, as the scammer's egg is in the scam. The pet golden egg scam. The scammer will put a pet egg named Golden Egg in the trade box and claim it's the golden egg. The victim would believe the scammer and end up trading valuable items for the disguised pet egg. The trick to spotting this scam is by noting the fact that the pet egg is rare, while the golden egg is legendary. Update: the Adopt Me. The team has made the word golden censored in pet names and has become N when users attempt to use the word. However, if players named their pet egg golden egg before the change came, then the word would not currently be censored. This means that this scam is still active, although most players believe otherwise. Trading system scam. In this kind of scam, the scammer comes up with a reason that they cannot use the trading system, such as their trading menu is broken. They will use this claim to trick the victim. The scammer would then tell the victim to give them something first and say that they would give their item afterward. In most situations, the scammer's item is better than the victim's as to make the scam more tempting. If the victim falls for this scam and gives them their items, the scammer would then either leave the game or stay to scam other players. Note: the trading menu always works. If a player claims it doesn't, they may have turned their trades off on purpose. If the player has a laggy device, it might take a little while for it to spawn fully in. Trust trading scam. This scam involves the victim clicking the accept button on their item for the scammer's bad item and empty trade box. The point in this scam is for the victim to trust that the scammer won't also hit the accept button. Players tend to fall for this scam because they enjoy the rush and thrill of this type of trading, or are promised a high-value item in return for playing. Friends and people the victims know may also try to scam the victim using this method. They claim that victim doesn't trust them if they don't want to trade with them. Note: the scammer would always insist the victim go first. If the victim asks to go after and the scammer keeps telling them to go first, then they are most likely conducting a scam. Video thumbnail scam. In this scam, the scammer will ask the victim to help with a photo thumbnail they will be posting online. The scammer will claim they are making a photo thumbnail and ask the scammer to enter the trading system. The scammer will ask the victim to add a valuable item to the trade menu and press accept over the scammer's empty slot bad item. The scammer will typically promise that they will screenshot and decline. They will then accept the trade and usually leave the server. The victim usually falls for this because they are promised a valuable item in return for helping. Players would normally use alternate accounts and friend accounts to create thumbnails. Do not fall for this scam. YouTuber scam. In this scam, the scammer would pretend to be a famous YouTuber's backup or the YouTuber themselves. To do this, they may dress up their avatar to match a famous YouTuber. They usually either have friends or alt accounts with them which react and confirm the scammer's claims. Some of these accounts say, "System, your friend XXX, a famous YouTuber, joined the game," through the chat to deceive other users. The victims would catch on and believe the scammer is actually famous. People who fall for this would give them free items under a false belief. Note: most YouTubers would not announce themselves in the chat. The majority of them don't want to be noticed by their fans or tend to ignore them unless doing a meet and greet. How to prevent getting scammed. 1. Believe it or not, there are many bad players in servers. Players should always be wary and not trust everyone. 2. Players should not trust everyone, even if they are someone they know in real life. 3. Players should trust their instinct. If it seems wrong or off, then it is most definitely a scam. 4. Players should not buy items from other players using bucks, Robux, or items from another platform. This always ends up being a scam. 5. Avoid buying high-valued items for cheap prices. These have a high chance of ending in a scam. 6. Players should only use the trading system to trade items. They should trade the items with other traders at the same time, not after or before. 7. Avoid players going over a 9+ item trade. 8. If players suspect a scammer is lying or making up a story, they should ask them to prove their claims. If the scammer keeps stalling or refuses to do so, players should leave immediately and warn others on the server. 9. For most scams, players should question the scammer and find ways through the scam that won't involve them losing items. For example, during the Write or Fly scam, players should ask the scammer why they can't feed the potion to their pet themselves or trade it to them. 10. If the scammer doesn't leave the game after they scammed the victim, players should report them immediately. This can be done through the trade history book in the trading hub or the in-game report menu. 11. Players should never give their password to anyone, not even close friends, family. They could go on the victim's account and trade themselves all your valuable pets and items. 12. Note that most scams are two-way scams, meaning the victim can also turn around to scam the original scammer. For example, if the original scammer asks the victim to go first, the victim can also tell the scammer to go first and leave with the scammer's items. How to detect scammers. Scammers use a large variety of tricks to gain the victim's trust. This can include: claim they are a YouTuber to gain the victim's trust, then conduct the scam on them. Note that almost anyone could create a YouTube social media account, claiming they will add the victim to reassure them they will not scam. Normally, the scammer unfriends the victim after the scam and may even block them, choosing to act as if they don't know what a scam is. Scammers pretend not to know what it is to gain the victim's trust, acting as if they're afraid of being scammed by the victim. The victim would believe the scammers' good intentions as they have not talked of scamming the victim, promising that if they scam, they will give a high-value item to the victim afterwards. After the scammer is finished with their scam, they will not stay in the server to give the victim the item. Scammers will often seem impatient for the victim to fall for their scam. They may tell the victim that if they don't follow through in the next few minutes, they would do it with another user instead. This is to panic the victim into doing the scam. Most scammers make up an excuse or a false story when conducting their scam. Scammers usually start with an attention grabber, then combine it with their scam. This includes announcing they're giving away a high-value item in the chat, then request the victim to trust trade, other scam, for it. Asking in the chat for players who want free items. After the scammer gathers the victims, they claim the victims have to trust trade, other scam, for it. Telling the entire server that if they know how to do a certain scam with them, they would give a valuable item afterwards. Note: Adopt Me cannot retrieve a player's pets after being scammed as they are not Roblox staff. They cannot track down those details. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this could help you to avoid getting scammed. Please click the like and subscribe button to help me make more videos. Thank you. 7 Rain Army number 1.